What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So the Switch 2 concerns mostly focus right now around pricing and, big time, availability. Just be able to get one of these things. And, well, now we're starting to see pre-orders go live, and I think there's a pretty simple answer to this one, but we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Phil Spencer, who made the rounds just ahead of the weekend, talking about the future of Xbox and how you're going to see more of their games on other platforms. And we have a trademark that's popped up, and one that I think right now is causing a lot of speculation because it lines up with another 25th anniversary. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below. And we're gonna start today with Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Well, kind of. It's actually a Vice City remake that was done by fans or the community. And it's very interesting with the release because, well, Take-Two, of course, didn't like it and they DMCA'd it. So what did the creators do? Apparently they just dropped it online. It's, of course, being passed around right now through torrents. And in fact, there's an entire video you can check out here that really goes over just the overall experience, the Vice City Next Gen Edition mod. And what this is from the Revolution team. This is actually Vice City in GTA 4's engine. And people are saying it's like the greatest mod they've ever seen, just in terms of obviously Grand Theft Auto, but in general. And it clearly Take-Two, I can't imagine, is very happy about this. And I think you also have to be careful if you look around for a torrent of this, since I'm sure people will take advantage of the popularity here and maybe pass around files that are malicious, but still, it's a very impressive modification and kind of an interesting idea since people have been asking about maybe something with Grand Theft Auto 4 since it came out a long time ago. It is weird to think that that was like, not like an early, but you know, earlier Xbox 360 release, certainly in the first half of the generation there. And then, oh yeah, we also got another Grand Theft Auto game in that generation. What a concept. Now we wait multiple generations for another Grand Theft Auto game. Still though, it's out there, so if you want to, I guess, sail the high seas and look for the torrent, you can check it out. Also, while we're going to talk about another trademark later on, this one did pop up and of course got people pretty excited, but then also was like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. Tales of Abyss. I say that makes sense because Bandai, they've already kind of talked about the idea of all these Tales games getting remasters, kind of remakes. I'm thinking more remasters consistently, and that's just the way that we're seeing some of these big publishers and developers mitigate risk for some of these bigger projects that take longer. These remasters, of course, do work to fill in the gaps. Tales of the Abyss specifically, I do remember it on the PS2, but I'm sure many people now remember it for the 3DS release, but that's the biggest thing, really, if you think about it. PS2, 3DS, it's like, that would be one that's falling in line with getting a more modernized remaster. Although some of these Tales remasters have been kind of sketchy at times, looking at something like Tales of Symphonia, where they still couldn't break that frame rate cap, and the GameCube version is still the one you want to play because it runs at 60 FPS. Still though, I think Tales of the Abyss would be an interesting one to at least put out there as a more budget-priced remaster, if anything, for the availability. Oh, and we did see Final Fantasy VII Rebirth release on PC, and there was a lot of discussion around this over the weekend, but I did notice, as well as many others, you can see on SteamDB, the concurrent player count, the peak, hit just over 40,000 people, which I know SteamDB numbers aren't the be-all, end-all, but this clearly is a big release here on Steam, and it was a big push on PC since it's already out on the PlayStation 5, but 40,000. So I think Square Enix is clearly learning a lesson here. I think that's actually decent for it being a late release on PC. It's already been available on PlayStation 5, so while people, of course, out there who have PCs say I'm not buying a PS5, there are plenty of people who have gaming PCs and PlayStation 5 systems for just that occasion. Oh, a game, even if from a third party like Square, is only on PS5, I guess I'll play it there, and then it's like, okay, would I actually go out and buy this 100+ hours, sometimes 200 hours for like all this stuff? Do I want to go through that experience again when I already did that and I guess got the platinum and everything on the PS5? So I'll be more curious when they get something like Final Fantasy 17 out on multiple different platforms, including PC, to see how those numbers do then. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Switch 2. Of course, there's a lot of discussion around this thing, but also people are kind of in a holding pattern right now. There was some talk that certain games might get announced from third parties, but there are many big names that are kind of being sidelined right now, waiting for April 2nd, because let's face it, Nintendo will have I'm sure, a number of first-party stuff there to announce. But as we saw when the Switch originally had its presentation in January 2017, there were a number of third-party developers that went there, stood on stage, and talked about how their franchise, long-running or new, would be there for Nintendo's platform. So in this case, yeah, they're also, I think, hanging out waiting, or just setting up marketing and PR, that kind of stuff. But there have been questions around availability for this system, since I'm sure there'll be a mad rush for pre-orders when they go live. So if you were a retailer right now, online retailer, and you had an idea, like, we probably will get some of these, we think it's this price, but we can take a deposit, you might go live with a pre-order just because it's gonna make headlines. And I gotta say, this made headlines everywhere. I had people sending it to me. I saw it in the feed from all these different outlets, and this is actually what it's pointing to. This is posted up, for example, over on TechCrawler. It says a retailer based in Italy, gamesandmovies.it, has recently initiated pre-orders for the Nintendo Switch 2, giving fans a sneak peek at what the upcoming console might cost. All right, here we go. Get ready for this one. The price that they have on their site roughly converts to $379.77. Now, they're saying it hints at a potential $350 price. I would not expect that one. $400 is probably the cheapest I could see this system being, and I still cannot rule out $450 or a bundle, as has sort of been discussed, for $500. It's just a way for them to get more money, obviously, up front with a game bundled in. And if that game is Mario Kart, while I don't think it's necessary, they could get away with something like Nintendo Land 2 or some kind of game that would more or less show off the feature set of this device. I'm sure there are things in there like the mouse setup, or even just better visuals and like things they can play around with load times, kind of like how Astrobot, or Astro's Playroom, I should say, came with the PlayStation 5. Nintendo could do something very similar here, but still, you can see the pre-order that they took a snapshot of here. Some were concerned it would just get ripped down. And here's the thing, Again, it's easy advertising. If you're a retailer out there online, especially, and you can just take pre-orders, and it might even just be a deposit of like $20 or something. That's easy enough to refund, and you're going to get a lot of eyes on your store, as we're seeing here. Now, I think what you're going to find with pre-orders is they'll go live just after Nintendo's April 2nd presentation, because they will tell us release date and price, and to be honest, that's usually all the big box retailers need to get the green light. Okay, how much does it cost? Okay, how many can I potentially get with their wholesalers? And then they go from there and start bringing in pre-orders. And if they don't have enough at launch, they'll do the typical list and then call you when it's ready. I will tell you my strategy, though, for the Switch 2 when it gets fully announced, price, release date around this time. I'm actually going to go out to like a physical big box store, like maybe like a GameStop, a Best Buy, maybe Target. GameStop last time with the Switch, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox One X, I actually had good luck with all of them pretty much. Like just kind of going out, getting the pre-orders in, and if you were able to even get into it, I think around that time, GameStop was kind of sketchy with like in-store shopping and stuff, but definitely with the One X, the Switch, just go to GameStop as soon as it ends, and usually their system would have been updated. That's my plan. Just get the pre-order in there in person, not to worry about shipping or FedEx or when's UPS showing up for the day. I'll just go out in the morning and pick it up. But let me know what you guys think about this. If you're keeping an eye out for any pre-orders, try to get an early ticket for the Switch 2, even ahead of the announcement of the price and the release date. I don't know, I think I'd still want to see some of the new games Nintendo has first. Next up, let's talk about Phil Spencer and Microsoft with their strategy that's continuously been evolving over the last year or so, especially once we started seeing some of their first-party games make the jump to PlayStation and Switch. There were a lot of questions. Microsoft had their podcast, their business update. Sounded like it was only going to be those 4, but if you sort of heard what they were like, kind of read between the lines a little bit there, it did seem like they were preparing more games. And in fact, now it looks like the floodgates have completely opened for Microsoft with their first-party releases, which of course leading to more and more questions as to what exactly they're doing here. Well, Phil Spencer did go on 2 different channels or podcasts talking about this. We had Gamertag Radio as an example. This was transcribed over on Pure Xbox, where Phil Spencer was talking about the idea of having up, he says, walls for where you can play your games. He says, I want everybody to be able to play on Xbox, and it does mean more of our games shipping on more platforms. Not just PlayStation. We love the work that we do with Nintendo. We love what we do with Valve on Steam, and that's going to continue. We'll just continue to do more of it. the thing that I've learned and continue to learn when I'm listening to creators, and every creator out there wants to build a game that can find as many players as they want. We're not going to put walls up around where people can engage with the great games our studios are building. So, hey, at this point, again, no red lines, nothing. It's Halo. We've already discussed the idea of that happening. Yeah, I think we're going to see that this year. Gears, I don't know how they're going to handle that necessarily. I don't know if Gears E-Day will move over immediately, or it'll be the situation kind of like Master Chief Collection where they go back, get some of the previous Gears games, maybe in a collection of some kind, as that's been rumored, and announce that for Xbox, PlayStation, and who knows, maybe Switch 2. I kind of feel like Switch 2 is going to get a lot of the back catalog from Microsoft, because that should be a pretty good market for Microsoft to sell in, since Nintendo doesn't necessarily like to align themselves completely in head-to-head competition with Xbox and PlayStation. So it's like, oh yeah, let's see what happens here when we drop these games there, since for the most part, a lot of Microsoft's titles don't really have counterparts on PlayStation, certainly, as we see things with like Sea of Thieves, but also with Nintendo. There's a lot, I think, of potential there with that Switch 2 and Microsoft's first-party lineup. But to go a bit further here, he did also talk about the importance of hardware, since that's the big concern here. It's like, okay, how long is Microsoft going to realistically keep the Xbox around? We can see this, though. This also transcribed from Gamertag Radio over on Pure Xbox. Phil Spencer says, our own hardware, I think it's fundamental to what Xbox is. It's not lost on me. I've said over and over that the box is in the name of our brand. I'll say in the position I'm in, I look at hardware as a critical part of what we do, but not trying to gatekeep the games off of other places. So they're still going to make the box, the Xbox, right? I think it's going to take different forms. I think they're going to license the OS, and that's going to be the big center of what they do. They'll still produce a piece of hardware, probably multiple pieces, like a handheld, but it'll sort of be like their Surface lineup, where Windows can exist on things from Dell or Acer, Lenovo. You'll have that with Xbox, though. So that's going to be a big hurdle for them to also be able to get past, since you need compatibility across the board. I'm sure with a bunch of different hardware configurations. So I'm interested to see if they can figure that out, as well as ownership and stuff across the board with all these different platforms becoming involved under, they're calling Xbox now, but it is what Microsoft is at its core, which is a software company. They still do hardware, as I mentioned, with like PC and with Xbox, and for a while there with phones, but at the end of the day, they are a software company. So when you ask things like Starfield, what's going on there, like Destin, you can see over on Twitter, posed this question outright to Phil. Can you solidify that Starfield is staying put for the time being? Phil Spencer basically said no. It was a little longer than that. You could check out Destin's his entire show there. He has it linked, or his clip there, over on X. I'll have that link down below, as well as Gamertag Radio stuff here. But at the end of the day, with Microsoft, they seem to realize that the Xbox isn't necessarily something that's going to, it's not going to sell 100 some odd million systems next generation, or the generation after that, in their mind. They want to get software as far as they can, and they want to be able to sell a bunch so they can make a bunch of money. And really, as a business, that's what they're going to do. So I don't know if it's going to work out for them. I mean, they'll sell games and make money, but my question, as well as many others, how long are they going to stay? How long are they going to stay with their Xbox? Because eventually it's like, we sold 5 million of these things. Is that necessary anymore? I guess we'll find out as we go along. One thing's for certain there, they've already confirmed we will see another generation from them, and there's potential for that starting here in about 2 years. So we'll see. Next up, let's talk about a trademark that was re-registered that had a lot of people talking, a lot of people speculating even, because, well, you can see it here. Skies of Arcadia. This is from Sega Informant, and again, this post gained some traction online. Sega has re-registered the trademark for Skies of Arcadia and Japanese name, Eternal Arcadia. Now, the immediate thought is, okay, hold on. Is there going to be something in the games department? Could we see a remaster? Could we see a remake? I think it's possible, but I also think there's a strong likelihood that it's for merchandise or other things. I mean, the fact that it's a re-register is like, okay, we want to keep this under our ownership, so let's do all the paperwork and get that done. I think that's more or less what this is for. But for 1 second, all right? 25 years, 25th anniversary is at the end of 2025. That would actually be a really cool release on the game side to go along with all that merchandise. So, I mean, okay, it came out on the Dreamcast at the end of 2000. North America, Japan, and everything. It went to the GameCube in like 2003. So if we go all the way back to its original release, yes, 25 years, and anniversaries do tend to work to sell games and merchandise, sure, but you can kind of tie it all together. The only issue is Sega has said that they are not a retro company unless there's money to be made, and I understand why they don't want to make a Dreamcast Mini because that is harder to make money on. But you gotta imagine that a remake or a remaster of Skies of Arcadia would be a bit more manageable. So I'm cautiously optimistic on this one. I think it would be a lot of fun to see this game make a return on all different platforms, and maybe a remaster like that that's lower budget could just kind of judge the room, judge the landscape of the current marketplace to see if there is interest in that franchise again, and if so, maybe we can get another one in that universe. So something to at least keep an eye out as we go through 2025. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Sony Productions and a new movie that they appear to be backing and is now currently in the midst of a bidding war between multiple different, I guess, platforms at this point. Anyway, we can see this is posted up. This is over on Hollywood Reporter. They say an intense bidding war is underway for a reboot of Resident Evil. That's the horror action movie franchise I'm sure many of you are aware of since it is based on the popular video games. And also, we've had a bunch of Resident Evil movies going back to what, like 2002 or something? For a while there, it was like 10 years. It's like this decade run. We got a new Resident Evil movie, every 2 or 3 years. It was pretty constant, and I think we've had one movie in the last 7 years? Something like that. It's been a little while. And to hear that this is something that's kind of just starting up is, we're still a ways off from it technically, but they say that Zach Krager is attached to write and direct this, so we'll see how that turns out. 4 studios, though, are elbowing for the win. Among them, Warner Bros. And Netflix, according to sources. Constantine Film, which has held the screen rights to the title since the late 1990s and has been behind the previous movies, will produce the reboot along with PlayStation Productions. This is, of course, just Sony continuing their exploration even just outside of video games onto the big screen here. They themselves calling it transmedia and stuff. So, not shocking to see Sony getting involved here. I guess a reboot is kind of, although I double checked, and again, I'm not super into the Resident Evil movies. Let me know where I am with this one. But it seemed like the last one was kind of a reboot. So I'm not really sure how that works. But again, I'm sure there's a whole like movie canon universe storyline thing going on there. But I will say a reboot, again, if that is the case, would make it a bit more approachable for people like myself and I'm sure many others. Especially if you can, while it is difficult, align it next to a Resident Evil video game release. It might not be the next big one, but if you get even like another remake or something that's around that time, it could, of course, work to push both the movie and the game itself. So something interesting here to keep an eye out. It seems like it'll be a while before we do get anything more tangible with, of course, a trailer and then eventual release. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which is Game of the Year Madness. Day 28, Metaphor ReFantazio taking out Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I mean, it's 71% to 29%, geez. Yeah, Metaphor came up big here, but that actually solidifies our final 4. So this is exciting stuff. It'll be happening this week, starting actually today. We will have Astrobot versus Indiana Jones, and then on the other side, we will have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth versus Metaphor ReFantazio, and then of course we'll lead up to the finals, which will also be taking place this week. So we'll be wrapping up Game of the Year Madness, should be before the weekend. So exciting stuff there. We'll see what happens with the final 4 and some big time matchups. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Tumbling, who says, thinking back to my childhood and using floppy disks, a 1 terabyte SD sounds freaking insane. Well, yeah, using floppy disk back then, it was holding a few megabytes. Now we're talking about the SD card that's like size of someone's like thumbnail, on the literally thumbnail, but like thumbnail, and it's 1 terabyte, 1.5 terabytes or something. And when you consider that, and then you realize how many floppies came with Windows, I think it was definitely more than 10. 11 or 12 maybe, and you had to sit there and babysit the thing for what felt like forever. Basically, it would go through one floppy. It took a long time, by the way. You'd pop that one out, you'd pop the new one in, hit enter, and then the little DOS-looking thing would go to the next line, and you'd see little dots just fill up, and it was almost you'd spend all afternoon doing it. It was like that. Now it's, you load it off of a USB stick. If you have to reflash or reload your OS, it takes a few minutes to do that. So we've come a long way. For all those out there who didn't have to hit shutdown and have the computer tell you it was safe to turn your computer off. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card, or maybe you wanted to go over some of the recent declines that have been shared by Circana when it comes to physical video game sales in the US and how we might see a slight resurgence here pretty soon. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.